Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers is excited to welcome a new affiliate partner to the podcast, and that is the Salary Bump. The Salary Bump is offering a special deal to the listeners of the Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers podcast, and that is a 15% off coupon for their digital course, the Salary Accelerator Program. Use the special code INSPIRE15 at the link below here in our notes and get 15% off the digital program. It's going to help you prepare for salary negotiations, whether you are negotiating a raise inside your current job or you're looking outside your company and you have a new opportunity. Congratulations. Either way, you're going to be able to approach the opportunity with more confidence than you have before. So check it out. Hi friends, Cathy and Cynthia with another episode of Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I bring you experts from all over the career management space to keep you up to date and help you advance in your careers. And today, my guest is very special. I'm super excited to bring her to you. Her name is Cynthia Coufal, and she is a teen anxiety specialist, but don't let the title of teen fool you because anxiety, sadly, is common to all of us, and it's really critical during job search. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome, Cynthia.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And this episode is going to be great because I want people to hear how we met, because that's an important story about job search, kind of about networking, and then everything that we've kind of developed with our relationship. So it's super important, and the tips you're going to share are important as well. So let's start off a little bit. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and then I'll talk about how we met and what our relationship has been and why I sought you out. But tell us a little bit about what you do, Cynthia, and how you help teens, and share a little bit about your practice.
Okay. Well, I was a public educator for 31 years. So I was a special education teacher for 6, and then I was a school counselor for 25. And I loved every bit of all of that. And I wanted to do more of that outside of the traditional school setting that I was in, because whenever I was just in a school, I only had those students and I didn't have impact anywhere else. So when I retired, I decided I really want to reach young people across the United States and even the world. So right before I had retired, I had started a podcast. So I have a podcast started out to be for teens because it started during the pandemic when we couldn't see our students. And then it's just continued on. And now I'm kind of doing it more for parents to kind of know about anxiety and what's out there for them to be able to access for their kids and for themselves. So I have been, for the last 3 years, I've been building my business with my podcast and YouTube channel about anxiety. And then I also have clients one-to-one. And I say teens because most of my clients are high school students. But I really have worked in the last 3 years with clients as young as 11, though that's not my favorite age, all the way to 25, 26 years old, because sometimes they've already graduated from college and then they're like, wait, I don't know what to do. Sometimes they're in college and they're not sure what to do next, or, like what's going to happen when I'm out of college. So I really have the whole gamut. And so I do say young people a lot just because that sounds a little bit better than teen when you are an adult and you don't want to be considered a teen anymore. But I am working on finding a way to help parents as well, because working with minors, especially in the teen anxiety space, of course, their parents have questions about what do we do in this situation? What do we do in this situation? Or how can we help further the program you're doing with our child at home? And so I want to just build out something where my parents are learning the skills that I'm teaching so that they can reinforce them at home. But also it might be helpful to them if they have anxiety, and just having a place to ask all their questions too. So I'm excited about adding that piece to what I do.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And listen, this is so exciting because anxiety is such a topic for all of us. And it's exciting, not because of the anxiety piece, but because there is help out there. And as a career coach, I talk to everybody all day long about the struggle of job search, and anxiety normally comes into the conversation. And it impacts some people more than others. And certainly, depending on how long you've been searching or what your circumstances are personally, it all impacts it. But I'm going to share with the audience about how we met because it's such a great story from a networking perspective. And this is really a lesson for everybody, too. But as many of my listeners may know, I have a program called the Inspire Career Student Professional Launch Program. And it is for college seniors to new grads, recent grads, to help them launch into new careers. So some of them may be seeking new jobs since they've graduated from college. A few of them are seeking internships for their last year. And I've been running this program now for 7 years, 100% success rate. We got all this great stuff going on. But what I have noticed over the years is that it seems to be taking these kids a little bit longer. And at first I thought, oh, it's the job market, problems with after COVID, no internships, different things. And yes, that's all part of it, no question. But I was noticing patterns too with anxiety with these young people to the point where the anxiety was becoming more of an issue than the job market. The anxiety was preventing them from showing up to meetings and from having them execute on their job search. And we were talking more about the anxiety than we were talking about job applications and talking about interviews. And so once the balance started, was we were getting out of balance with that, I knew it was time to do something. And I knew I had to integrate a response to anxiety into the program as leader of the program. So talking about it wasn't enough, right? I tried to talk with these young people and tried to help coach them out of it, but it wasn't enough. I needed to bring in an expert. And so I went to LinkedIn and I started looking and I started searching to try to find somebody that could come in and help me with the program. And I had looked and I had talked to a few people and then I found you. And literally, that's how it happened. I was searching. And this is a lesson for everybody, that's out there trying to make connections, planning to grow their business, whatever. And I'm not suggesting that you talk to every single person that reaches out to you. You have to vet, you have to use common sense, right? But I did reach out to you and I told you how I found you and you could look at my profile and we used, we were very safe about how we connected and we talked a few times before we actually got on and really had a deeper conversation. But it was awesome because you had some great content out there and I watched your podcast before I reached out because if I was going to let you speak to my young people, I really wanted to make sure that I could trust you and that you were good for them. And I was very comfortable with you. So we brought Cynthia in and we had 2 sessions. I brought all of my young people together and we had 2 group sessions with Cynthia. She came in and she talked to my young people and let them talk a little bit about their anxiety and their job searches and then walked them through first of all, you'd talk to them in terms of kind of level setting, right? Everything, this is all normal, right? And then you gave them some exercises and some tips about how to deal with this. And why don't you just talk a little bit kind of about what you did with them, Cynthia? Because there's a lot of applications to a lot of people.
Yeah, because it's a lot of the stuff that I do with my clients. But we talked a lot about where does anxiety come from? And a lot of our anxiety, everyone has thought-based anxiety where our thoughts say things to us that get us to get into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response because those thoughts are really upsetting to us, whether it's you're going to fail or nobody likes you or you're not going to get the job or you're terrible or you're never going to make money or whatever the things are whenever any of us think those things, we feel upset about that. So we talked about like how that happens in the thoughts and that the mindset that typically there's 3 mindsets that anxiety tends to come through. One of them is perfectionism. And I think we found that many of the clients that are in your program are perfectionists and that really does slow down the process of things because if you think that everything has to be 100% perfect all the time, you really stall because you're just redoing, trying to make it perfect. And so then you don't get your result very quickly. Then we talked about intolerance to uncertainty, which is another huge one because that uncertainty of, will I get the job? What will it be like when I graduate? What will it be like at that new job? All of that uncertainty, which None of us are fortune tellers, so we don't know what the future is. We all have that uncertainty, but some people are paralyzed by it. And we talked about what that is like. And then the third one is over responsibility. People who think that their reactions are causing the reactions of other people. Like, I have to say yes to everything so no one gets upset. I'm completely responsible for other people's reactions and feelings. And that's really debilitating too, because if we are worried about everyone's reactions to us all the time, we're going to be tiptoeing around things that we really don't want to because we're worried about what people are going to say. So we talked about all of those different types of mindsets. And then there was a quiz that they could take on their own to see, where they fell in those three. But a lot of them could identify right away as we were talking, like, oh, yeah, that's where my thoughts are going. And so a lot of times when you hear the different ways that your brain goes, you can kind of identify where you fall into that. And then we talked about when you feel that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response on your body, because it's a response that typically wants to protect us. And it is in our body to protect us from dangerous things. So we can't turn it off. It would be great if we could just say, oh, I'm not going to get anxious anymore, or I'm going to cure you from being anxious. That would be great if I could do that, but no one can get away from feeling anxious sometimes. But we talked about how can we turn the volume down, because some people's volume is turned up too loud. And so it overcrowds and takes over, and then we can't do a lot of things that we want to do. So we talked about that emotions are like a tunnel. There's a beginning to our emotion, that first feeling that something's off or we don't feel comfortable. Then there's a middle where it gets pretty intense. And then there's an end where it flows through our body and it leaves. And that whole thing, if we don't stop it from happening, can maybe only last 90 seconds or maybe just up to 10 minutes. But typically we do something to like clog up the tunnel or to stop it from happening. And sometimes it's like doing nothing. So, binge watching Netflix all day, or, going to take a nap the rest of the day, or things like that help us to feel better, actually keep that feeling inside of us, because when we wake up, oh no, we still didn't do the things we were supposed to do. Oh no, that's still hanging over our head. And then the whole thing starts over again. And so we talked a little bit about what is it like to actually feel emotions in our body and let them flow through, and just like not fight them, not try to stop them, not try to get rid of them, but just let them flow through and go through our body. So we did a little activity with that, and they got a download that they could listen to on their own to kind of continue to do that, because it is a practice. It isn't something you do one time and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. And then we talked about what are some of the things they are doing that stop them from being successful, like the gaming all day or binge watching, or sometimes people eat, some people go shopping, some people take naps, some people go clean their closet or whatever. And there's nothing wrong with cleaning your closet, but if you're doing that instead of doing the things you're supposed to do, then it's a safety mechanism instead of a way to expand your life. And so then we talked about what's that next step you can do in the right direction that pushes you into that kind of uncomfortableness, but allowing it to be there. Because really, most of the things we want to do in life that are worth doing have some uncomfortableness, some anxiety attached to them, like getting jobs and asking people on dates and driving cars, and everything really that we want to do is going to create a little bit of that. And so how do we still go forward and do the next thing? And what is that next thing? And so we kind of just, in 2 sessions, we kind of talked through how that would work.
But the tools you gave them, we continued to reuse as we went through our sessions together. And kind of how I frame that, and as you're talking about it, what I would say to other people is it kind of gave them permission, if you will, to have the anxiety. Like, I think they thought it was a bad thing and they were ashamed of it. Like, and oh, I can't do it. And they kept apologizing for it. And you kind of gave them permission, if you will, to say, yeah, I have it. Okay, we all have it. And we just have to learn how to manage it and just recognize it and live with it. And this is what we do. And it was just like any other piece of our behavior, right?
Right. Well, and in our society, we repress things that don't feel good. And even, and
Hello.
as, yes, and as parents, we unfortunately, I mean, I think about how often after I realized what I was doing, how often I said these kinds of things. But if, my daughter or son was upset about something, oh, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. Just, move on. Just don't think about it. Just, and all that's about repressing instead of like, of course you feel anxious about going to the new school. Of course you feel anxious about this job interview. Let's feel it. Let's allow it. Like I didn't know this language when they were growing up. So I didn't talk to them that way. I was doing the don't worry about it. Or I didn't take things away from them very often, but I see families doing this where, oh, you feel anxious about that? Well, I'll do it for you. I'll make the phone call. I'll go talk to your boss. I'll go talk to your teacher, instead of having the child do it. And so then they never get any practice in doing anything that's uncomfortable. And they're really messed up. Then when they get to the adulthood, when they have to do things that are uncomfortable, they just say, oh, no, I can't do it.
And that's exactly why the program was created, was to help teach these kids independence, because the parents were trying out of love and out of, trying to help their kids. They were trying to do things. And then when they'd run up against a wall, they couldn't find a job for them. And they would come to me and then realize these kids need so much help. But the parents had to step back so kids could learn how to do it for themselves. And, and the parents were great about that once they were able to release that and let the kids do it for themselves. Sometimes it's hard, but the anxiety does come with it. And what I had seen after you had come into the group and you shared this is they were able to, in the next sessions then, to repeat what you had said. And when we talked about the exercises and they had listened to the downloads, and it was so great because they had the tools to refer to. And I think it's so much like us adults with a lot of life experience, because these kids don't have a lot, right? They just don't have a whole lot of context and a lot of that maturity, and their brains aren't completely, matured and so forth. But it's just like that where, you have to kind of walk yourself through it. You have to reinforce it to yourself. And I'm here to help reinforce it to them. But it is practice and it can be scary sometimes. And listen, I deal with executives for job search, and sometimes that can get a little scary too. And they have incredible experience and they're amazing people and are making a ton of money and they are fabulous and they have all that going for them. So imagine when you're a 21-year-old young person and maybe you have an internship and maybe you don't, and it's your first job. It's a lot on a young person. It's a lot. And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Cynthia. Do you feel like, because I talk about this with parents, as a parent, I talk about it. As a coach, we talk about it. Is it your thought or your opinion, your professional opinion? Do kids have it tougher these days? Is it a different world for them? Is it social media? What is it that it seems like more and more of these kids have more anxiety than we ever had? It seems like there's just more of all of that and they're struggling more. What is your opinion on that?
I really do believe that it has to do with the smartphone and social media. And for a long time, I kept saying, oh, it's not that, because I have a smartphone and I know how to do these things. And my kids have smartphones and they know how to do things, but they're millennials, which there is something about this Gen X and Alpha generation. They've had a device, a smartphone, or at least they've had some sort of internet based device since they were born. And so there's something different, like when you're learning how to do your social skills and talk with people and get in uncomfortable situations. We had to get in uncomfortable situations in order to have anything that we wanted to have when I was growing up. And even my millennial kids had to do a lot of that at the beginning, probably kindergarten through seventh grade or so. They still had to talk face to face with people. They had to use a regular telephone to call and do things. And then in high school, they had a flip phone where they could text some people, but it still wasn't a smartphone and there wasn't social media. They were just texting people. And so there's something about that when you don't have the same skills in talking with people, having interactions with people that are real in front of you, no screen, nothing, distracting you from the conversation that you're having. There's just a different level of competency, I think, that you get in social relationships that you don't get if you don't have practice in that. And so there is a movement now, and maybe maybe this movement's been going on longer than I know about, but recently I've been hearing about the movement where parents are not going to get their child a device until they're in 8th grade. And so they will again have this whole time to learn social interactions, dealing with people, learning all that. And by 8th grade, you've pretty much figured out how to deal with people. And then they can get a device. And then they don't get social media till they're 16, so that they have another amount of time to learn about themselves and get confident in themselves before they get on social media. And I love it. And I hope that this, becomes like a big movement where most people are doing it, because I really do think that that's where some of this, a lot of this anxiety has come into play. And then where you're talking about careers, there's so many uncomfortable things you have to do in a social setting with talking with people, going to interviews. You just can't do all that behind a screen. And I just think that that's where what's the missing piece. And so we just need to be reteaching this uncomfortableness. And we need to be pushing our kids to do uncomfortable things from kindergarten on. When they say they don't want to do certain things, have them do it. And in the book, The Anxious Generation, he talks about by age 8, you should be giving them tasks to do where they have to walk somewhere and cross a street by themselves. And that terrifies me when I think about my little grandkids. I'm like, oh no, I never want them to cross the street. But if they don't know how to do these things, and kids aren't doing them anymore because they don't have to, they're not learning skills that they need. And when they do those tasks that are scary and then they accomplish them and it's over and it's like, oh, I did that. That builds that confidence so that they're not as anxious the next time because they've gone through these uncomfortable situations and tackled them. And so I just think we're seeing a generation where we just threw out cell phones and social media and didn't think anything about it because we're fine. And the millennials are fine. But we weren't thinking about when did it start and how did it hinder that beginning development. And so we have a generation of kids who we practiced on and we had no idea what the outcome was going to be. And it wasn't a good, to me, it reminds me of way back in the day when they said smoking was fine. It was to, I don't know, to make your throat feel better.
You don't know better until you know better, then you do better.
And then when they were like, oh, people are getting lung cancer. Oh, people, have all these problems. Oh yeah, now smoking's not good. But I think it's the same thing as the cell phones were fine and they're these great devices and there's many wonderful things you can do. And everybody just threw them out to everyone. It was like, oh, it's fine. But it really wasn't fine. And so now we know it's not fine. So let's go back and put some restrictions on it and make it better for the next generation.
It's an interesting point, and I agree with you 100%. But I'm going to throw one thing into the mix here, and I wonder what you think about this. All right, so we tell these, this is how we kind of recommend now, and maybe it's a little too late for some of these kids that are already at the end of Gen Xers, right, or Gen Zers.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've gone.
I think I said X earlier. It is Z.
But yeah, Gen Z, Gen Z, right? So maybe it's kind of late for them. But here's the problem now. Let's even say we take exactly what your advice is for this alpha generation coming up. Now you got AI. All right. Mm-hmm. So now we're trying to work on everybody's social skills. And now even these kids at the end of Gen Z, we're trying to say, okay, let's work on your communication skills and we're helping them with the anxiety. Now we're throwing AI into the mix. So this is what happens now. Now they have to go on an interview. It's bad enough they have to work on their social skills for the interview. Now they got to do the asynchronous interviews where it's just you're talking to the blank screen because the employers, they want to use technology. They want to use AI. They don't even want to talk to you, right? So now they're not even talking to them. They're using all these AI platforms. They're using AI to write the job descriptions. And now most people are using AI to write their resumes, right? And everybody sounds alike. It's just and I'll tell you, this is a problem, I know for me, when I got my first phone 30 years ago or whenever that was, I haven't memorized a telephone number since. I don't know my good phone numbers, right? Because I don't have to. but I used to, right? So now when you start using AI to do all your stuff, now you don't know anything. You're not even thinking about it. So now you're not even thinking about your skills and your branding and how are you communicating that because AI is doing it all for you. So, we can send one message, but now the technology is advancing. So we're kind of sending another one. So I
Yes,
think these poor kids, right? And they're
I
just
know.
getting caught in between because where are they, right? And how are they supposed to react? So it's constant. It's just the changing expectations and then the changing expectations for the employer, right? And that's always been the way, like with these young kids, right? Entry level, 3 years of experience. What? Are you kidding me? Right? So they don't know where to turn. So it's all of these things. And then that's where I think a lot of this anxiety comes from. And I know I had one young girl who I think, you spoke with that said, I compare myself to everybody and everybody else is farther along than I am. They're doing better than I am. And the truth is maybe some are, but most aren't. And you tend then to downplay what you're doing. And we all do that, don't we? That's social media. That's why I try to stay away from it because it makes me feel bad about myself. I want to know how terrible I am compared to everybody else. So it's just very difficult, I think. Like, what are your thoughts on AI and how that relates to kids and interviewing and that expectations for them?
That is a very tricky thing because I'm loving AI myself, so I know, I can see the seduction of going into that. And this is you're teaching me because I haven't been on a job interview for a very long time, and so I didn't even know that they were going to just having them talk to an AI thing and then they're going to analyze it later, which is very interesting to me.
Fascinating.
I think even with social media and all those things, there when your child is at the age where you're going to start, opening that up and allowing them, and there's going to be a time when, school they're going to use AI for different things or whatever, to be teaching from the very beginning like the best practices. So what I'm learning about AI as I'm using it is that it can be a great thought partner to me. It can be like I don't have a team right now. I'm a solopreneur, so I kind of like it for a brainstorming partner or somebody who can kind of help me come up with some ideas or ask me questions I wouldn't think of to help me move forward in something that I'm doing. And I think if we teach kids to use it as a way to, maybe be like a brainstorm partner or something that's kind of working alongside them, but not doing the work for them. And if they want their resume to stand out, they're going to have to write most of it themselves and then maybe have AI tweak it a little bit. But having AI just write it for them, the people are going to be able to tell and they're not going to get the job. So it's going to be important for them to know how to best use it to create something that's your own voice and the way that you would, that's your story and it's your way of doing things. And so I think that's a good thing for them to learn because AI is not going away and they're going to have it, in their adult life and in their jobs and everything. And so how is the best way to use that? So schools can be teaching that, parents can be teaching that. If parents don't use AI, because a lot of my friends who aren't in a creative space aren't using it because they're like, why do I need it? um, but in our lives where we're creating content and we're, trying to do the best thing for our clients, it helps us to generate more information. But I think if we are teaching them the best ways to do that, just like when the internet started, I remember in school, we taught a lot about digital safety and how do you vet a good source. If you search for something, these sources are not legitimate sources and these sources are. And so I think we just need to teach AI in the same way that if you just tell it to write everything for you, you're going to sound really dumb and everyone's going to know it. You can already tell on the internet when someone has used AI and when someone wrote it themselves. And the people that are um, going to hire clients or hire people know what is AI generated or not. And so it's going to be important for them to learn how to use it to help them and not instead of them, I think is how they're going to have to look at
Right.
it.
But this just continues to layer on the anxiety.
Yeah.
And now I have the tool, but I really can't use it, but kind of use it. this is just what I see. These are the conversations. And I think, too, when I talk to my professional, my executive clients, there's, they have come to terms with how they use that and they get it. They can do it. But to them, again, they're mature, they've got all this great life experience, but they recognize the rules are constantly changing. Well,
Yes, that is confusing.
it is, right? So imagine when you're young and you just don't have that experience. I mean, this is where it's just coming from. So, I mean, I just, my heart aches for these kids because it's just difficult, but by the same token, it's only going to get tougher, right? So it's about teaching the life skills. It's just different, so for that. But Cynthia, can you talk a little bit about once they get into the workplace? Because I mean, ultimately, this is preparing kids to work. And I have a lot of kids that want to work remotely. They want to stay home. They don't even want to go there. But I try to encourage them to at least want to get hybrid, at least, right? To get relationship with people and to go in. Can you talk a little bit about kind of overcoming that anxiety in the workplace? Because I think they're going to be anxious for that too, because that's a level up from them taking those retail jobs that we all have when we're young, and getting into that professional workplace.
Yeah. Well, and I think because, again, it has been so easy for them to have relationships with people that they never meet, that they just sit in their room and have these relationships. It is really difficult to now go out and actually go to a building that you don't know how to navigate and people that have all different kinds of personalities that you're not used to. And I think it's just that going forward, even though you're uncomfortable, they're never going to feel 100% excited or no anxiety to go into a new building or to meet new people. But that is one of those skills that you have to be able to push yourself into, and just maybe looking into what are some things I could say to someone in a small talk kind of way. Because again, with texting and being on a screen, it's easier to sort of bypass some of that stuff. And a face-to-face relationship, you do have to know how to do some small talk and just kind of like get to know you. So maybe having conversation starters that they can at least have in their mind, like, oh, this is something I could say to someone when I'm meeting them for the first time, which are things that we probably were taught in a roundabout way when we were growing up. Like we saw our parents doing chit chat with people because we would just be hanging out with our parents, watching them do those things. Or like I said, when we were growing up, we had to go into the building to ask for the job, or we had to navigate things on our own without a device. We just had to figure out how to do things. We had to go ask somebody, how do I get to this office? How do I go here? And kids just don't know about doing that. They just haven't had to have that experience. And so the more parents can push that kind of stuff ahead of time while they're still in school, while they're still in high school, having them make their own appointments. Maybe their doctor, dentist, eye doctor, whatever is in a new building, have them go in the building by themselves and have them figure out where is the office, who do I need to talk to? How do I get to where I'm supposed to go without your guidance? Because it's not going to hurt them. I mean, they probably don't want to do it, but you could even just be out in the car, or, you could drop them off and come by and pick them up later, but they have to go and do the stuff that's difficult because it's just skills that are going to be so good for them. But even if you are going into that new job, have some things that you're going to talk to people about. If it is hybrid, then good. You're going to have some days where you're going to maybe have to be more uncomfortable, talk with people, go to lunch with people, whatever. And then some days you get to stay home and work in your pajama bottoms or whatever it is that, I like working from home too. I totally get it. I do miss the personal aspect of going into an office. And so a hybrid situation to me sounds amazing because I could get the being around people when I wanted it and be at home when I wanted it. And but they do have to know how to have conversations, deal with different types of personalities, and just having some practice things in their head that they can talk about because they're just not used to having to do that.
Taking a quick break to share something I think you'll find valuable. If you're negotiating a raise or exploring a new role, check out the Salary Accelerator program. It's a digital course through our affiliate partner, the Salary Bump, and it can help you approach salary conversations with strategy and confidence. Use the code INSPIRE15 for 15% off of the digital course. Find the link in the notes below. Cynthia, on your podcast, can you share a little bit about some of the topics? Like if people were going to go visit your podcast, what kind of topics do you have on there like that the parents and young people could access to learn a little bit more about?
Well, I have 241 or 2 episodes now, so there's so many that I know.
Wow. Oh, you've been doing it's COVID though, you said, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
practically everything you ever wanted to talk about.
Everything you want to know about anxiety, but
Right,
for
it's
right?
there. And I have some coming up that are new topics I haven't ever talked about before, but I can tell you what is so interesting to me. My number one episode in the last couple of months has been the one about anxious driving. I have a guy come on from a driving school and he talks about he said it's actually good to have an anxious driver, when they're learning to drive, because he said they'll be more cautious if they're kind of an anxious driver. But he has a list of like how to know that your child is ready to drive and what parents can do to help their child with not being as anxious about learning to drive. Because, a lot of kids don't want to drive anymore.
I know that. That's another thing.
Yeah.
And I have young people I've worked with that are in college and beyond that do not have driver's license.
Yes. And so that's been my number one episode in the last 6 months, which I didn't think, I thought it would be interesting, but I did not think, it is far and above much more watched and listened to than any other. So I think that's interesting. So I think parents and maybe teens are worried about that too. But I have a lot about just how health, like what you're eating is affecting your anxiety, how your exercise program. In the last couple of months, I had a girl who's a power lifter, and she went through a terrible loss of her dad dying when she was 18. And the powerlifting just totally changed how her confidence and the way that she dealt with the loss and then moving on with her life, because she was getting ready to go off to college and she had 9 siblings. So she was one of 10. She was the oldest of 10. And her dad dies right when she's getting ready to go to college. And then she's like, oh no, here's all these siblings. I should probably stay home and help. I need to do all these things. And, her mom was like, you need to go on. This is what you were supposed to be doing. And she just talked about how powerlifting really changed just how she feels about life. And she's a very confident girl and going on to help other young people in the world do things. So I think that's great. But really, literally, if they go back, especially to the beginning, I have talked about everything that you can talk about. But most of it is about how do you regulate your emotions? At the beginning, it was all emotions. How do you regulate sadness, anger, all the things. And then it turned into just anxiety. But how you regulate anxiety is really how you regulate all your uncomfortable emotions. So, anything that comes up, you can still use the same tools. And I have episodes just about each tool by itself. So you can really dive deep into it if you want to.
Okay, good. What's your thought on these emotional support pets? Seems all these young kids a lot of them have them now. Colleges and cats and dogs and parrots and stuff. Are these helpful to them?
I'm a little bit worried about it. I think working in special education and working with a lot of neurodivergent clients and students, I see that there can be help in some ways, especially kids that really can't calm themselves. Animals are very calming.
Sure.
But I think that it's overused, as almost everything we ever get diagnosed with or do. It can become a crutch.
Yeah.
And I do think that I see it almost making people be a victim. Like, well, I can't do anything unless I have this pet, or, and it becomes just another thing that keeps them from doing all the things they really want to do. So I would be really careful about it. I'm not a huge proponent of it, but I also don't have pets. So I feel like I'm a little bit biased in that way too, because I'm like, I don't want to be bothered with that stuff.
Yeah, I get that.
So I didn't at school when kids would bring it up. I was like, let's not go there. Let's just figure out how you can deal with things without that.
I guess the thing is, though, you can't take it into the workplace. I mean, there's a very few people that can take their emotional support dogs.
Right.
Very few, very, very few can take medically necessary dogs And I've only seen
Yes.
into the workplace 1 out of 1,000. So I
Right.
think that's kind of the test for me, is to say, if that's the case, then it kind of has to meet that standard. And if
Right.
that's not the case,
Well,
then why you carry all the long until then, you're not going to need it then, you know?
right. And I don't, as far as I know, schools are still not allowing the emotional support animals. I mean, obviously the medically necessary ones, yes.
Colleges do.
But, oh, really?
My daughter
That is
went through my
interesting.
daughter's college. She was a resident assistant, and oh yeah, they had them in the dorms,
Well,
running
see,
free,
I think
running
that would
free.
be
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a lot of liability. I know my school did not want the liability because those animals are sometimes not trained or, like the animals that are working with someone that has disabilities that have been trained, that's a whole different thing than just saying, "Oh, well, this is my emotional support animal." You know, "Oh, how was it trained?" Or you don't know anything about it. And if it was to hurt another student or whatever, like I just can't even imagine the liability of all that. So I know we didn't allow it unless it was, the medically needed kind. And I don't, that's called something different, just service. Service animals were allowed, emotional support animals were not. So, yeah, I would say the same thing as a parent. If your child wants to work in any, a lot of different careers, then they need to find a way, hopefully, to not need that because it's not going to be something that they're going to be able to take with them. I guess if they're going to do remote work only, I suppose it could work. But I don't think people should assume that all work is going to be remote.
Very few people are doing remote these days. I mean, there's technology has historically been remote, and there's still that, but for the most part, the trend is people going back into the office, even for a lot of the technology jobs too. So it's just, like everything else, trends, right? Comes back around,
Yes.
just how it is.
Oh, I know, I know,
Now
I've seen a lot of them come and go.
right, absolutely. Well, listen, we're almost at the end here. What else can you tell us, Cynthia? What else have you got going on in terms of your resources and helping parents and helping young people? What's kind of the newest thing you got going on to serve your clients these days?
I love the UMAP that I give. That's the 4 assessments in one. They get their, strengths, values, preferred versus burnout skills, and their personality. It's all in it. It's put together all in one profile, and I think that all my clients would say that's probably their favorite part of what we do together, and even though the UMAP can be used for career exploration or all different. It doesn't even have anything to do with anxiety necessarily. I just got trained in it and I really loved it. And I added it to my anxiety program. And I'm finding that when kids learn about themselves and have this self awareness about who they are, the confidence level just goes up so high. And when their confidence is better, their anxiety is lowered. And it's just like, I didn't even purposely do it that way. I wanted them to know their strengths so we could use the strengths to help them with their anxiety. But all of them just got this confidence about themselves. And the parents are sending me messages like, oh, they're so much more confident. And they're doing this and that. And they never wanted to do that before. And I really think it's because they're self aware. And I think we need to have more self awareness really in school, like we were talking about. Like we need to be learning about ourselves when we're young. And so, since most of my clients are high school, a few in the middle school, but it is an adult assessment. So, even if I have like postgraduates, we use it there too, because they can still use that to decide, well, what do I want to do with this career? What do I want to do with this degree? What are my strengths here? And how can I use those strengths in my resume, in my college applications, and, all the things. And so, it's really been my favorite part of what I do. And in my parent program that I'm building, I'm going to have the parents do the strengths part of it too, because I want the parents and the child to like compare their strengths. And maybe some of the butting heads is because their strengths are kind of adjacent or like they're opposite of each other. Or maybe, there's things that they can see, oh, this is the same about us. Let's use this in our relationship to make it better.
Yeah. I always say too, because when I give my disc assessments or strength finders and all these different things to my clients too, I always say it's great to have an objective information about yourself, because oftentimes it validates what you kind of know anyway, right?
Yes,
And
right.
which is so it's so reaffirming. And other times it's that great insight into you're like, oh, and it's just always presented in such a way that it just helps you just really round out. I'm trying to say, but it really rounds out the words that you have, right? It gives you language to be able to talk about yourself better. It's so cool. That's so
Yeah,
great, Cynthia. Thank
I
you.
know.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much. We're out of time here today, but thank you for coming on. Thank you for helping with my young people. Thank you for sharing about your knowledge about anxiety. And just, I'm so grateful that we met. And
Oh, me too.
thank you for accepting my invitation on LinkedIn because it kind of has opened up our new relationship. And I
Yeah.
hope that we continue to work together as I, start a new cohort for my young people. It's just, I really treasure our relationship. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I look forward to working with you some more too.
Wonderful. All right, folks, listen, before you hang up here, make sure that you subscribe here and that you get notified when we drop new episodes. And make sure that you follow Cynthia. We've got her information down below. And if you have problems, your young person has problems with anxiety, make sure you reach out to Cynthia and give her a call too. All right, everybody, until we meet again, live inspired.